day, later in the afternoon, there was a lightning bust that had come through. Eventually in the evening, just before sundown, we got called to go to Alabaugh, and one of our other intermittents from the city, he had talked to someone who was down there already, and said that they were burning a lot of structures down, that the fire was burning pretty heavily and rapidly, so just a heads up. We staged on 71 until we could get an assignment, and we were told to go in on Flyway Road, and we were going to attack the fire. It ended up changing pretty quickly to going to structure protection because the fire was moving pretty rapidly through the grass and timber.
Basically, we left the safety zone in operations, and we knew that this second house was going to get impacted shortly with fire. And by the time they got to this intersection, we were already getting impinged by fire. We told the structure resources that it wasn't a good place to be and it was time to pull out, and had no luck. Basically grabbed them by their shirt collars and forced them in their trucks and made sure they drove out ahead of us. And we told them to go out to Highway 71 and stage. At this point, as me and Jay were driving out of this second house, I made the comment to him that we were going to get somebody seriously burnt or killed tonight. Just with the other agencies seemed like they had more invested into these structures than what we were willing to risk. And by them not wanting to leave when the division and ops is telling them to pull out, it started to raise some hairs on your neck.
And so we bumped back down Flyway Road and went into the first structure that we came to. Originally we were just going to prep the house, leave, and go to the next one. And quickly that had changed because we could see the fire progression was kind of heading that direction, and we knew it was moving quickly through the grass. So we decided that the engine captains had talked, and they decided that we were going to just burn out this field that was around the house and stay there, let the fire pass, and then kind of follow it out. And so my engine captain and I, Wyatt, started burning down the driveway. We jumped sides and burned back around to put some fire on the ground and give us a nice big safety zone. And we also burned around the back side of the house, and as we were finishing up, I asked before I put my torch out, is there anything else you want me to light? And they said, yeah, there was a little camper over on the side of the house. Why don't you go around that just to make sure nothing's gonna burn it up. Went over there and it was pretty well in mowed grass, so there was nothing to burn.
We pulled into the third house here, and as the smoke cleared, we could see our Forest Service resources, 2 engines had set up there. From here, my initial impression was there was a lot of heat in and around the structure, even with their fire on the ground. It stayed on the ground, but you could tell that there was a lot of heat built up, and I didn't even know if the house would make it. As I approached, we got closer to the house. I guess my opinion started to change. To me, it looked like they'd done a really good job keeping the fire to the ground. It was now moving away from the structure. And then you get into the whole deal that these 2 engines I had worked closely with over the years, and I had a higher comfort level than I did the house before, the house 2. Operations and me talked, and we pretty much instantly knew that we needed to at least try to fire the remaining patch of this timber island out. And basically that's where I picked Josh Lane up. He came out around the 5th wheel camper that was sitting there. I wanted to scoot around the house just to see what it looked like from my own view. And at that point I left the vehicle with, hard hat, no mix, no handheld radio or pack or gloves. And I was just basically looking for an initial assessment around the house to see where the problem area was.
And as I was walking my way back to the engine, I got grabbed and by Grant and Jay, and they said, come with me real quick, and so I ran over towards them, which was just off the side of the house a little ways, and they said that we were going to burn up this slight hill, and So we proceeded to start burning up the top of the hill, and it was really windy the whole time we were there, and so things were moving fast. And as we started burning up the backside of the house, my torch kept blowing out, and so I kept having to go back and relight it off the fire that I had put on the ground, and we were trying to move quickly and get back out of there.
Everything's sucking in, pulling into the fire around the house well. That was the first time I turned back. I was ahead of Josh. As we progress, his torch starts staying lit, and I would say somewhere in this vicinity, I turn around again, and I'm noticing more of a flanking out pattern from his firing. It's sucking in still, but it's wanting to flank away from it. As we continue up the ridge, I'm seeing a massive glow coming out of the canyon. It's very evident at this point in time. And as I'm starting to get over here, I can see fire on the back side of the ridge. The fire around the house is really hot at this point, so I know there's no option to cut to the left. And once I get up into this opening up here, I get to see that the fire is actually quite a ways down the canyon, and it's all wanting to come up out of the canyon at this point. As I look out into the meadow, I got a continuous line of fire out in the meadow. Most of it, I'd say, is 4 to 6 foot flame lengths. There's a finger that has like 2 foot flame lengths that isn't with the rest of the front. And that's when I turned and I grabbed Josh and I said, we got to make a run for it now. Get rid of your torch, we're running for it. I pulled his radio out of his chest harness, and I called operations, told him we've been cut off, we got to make a run for it. That was the only transmission I made. And at that point in time, I thought our best chance was going for the finger with 2 foot flame lengths through the grass. And we start running, and as we come out, you know, we're at a good jog, and the wind's starting to pick up a bit. I'm moving at a good pace, but not a dead sprint. And I keep trying to look for a hole where we could try to sneak through somewhere in here, and it wasn't evident where there was a spot. We're still headed for this finger that's right out here that has 2 foot flame lengths on it. You know, right out in here, I'd say is 4 to 6 foot still in the grass. Unburned, you know, knee-high grass. Somewhere right in here is where I feel a really strong downburst, and I grabbed Josh by the shirt collar and I told him, we gotta hold up, we gotta see what it's gonna do. I didn't even get the words out of my mouth. Instantly, this is now 30 foot flame lengths laid running at us. And I just did a quick scan, turned around, and just about where this tree is right here, there's 4 to 6 foot flames. And I told him that's where we're going, we gotta run through it. And at this point, it's a dead sprint. I mean, this is chasing us as quick as we're moving.
So we jumped to the flame front and landed in the black, and at that point, it was 0 visibility. Grant was like, get down on one knee, because I mean, your eyes were watering, you couldn't see anything, plus it was dark out and super smoky, and so your eyes were watering like crazy, you couldn't breathe, you know, snot and phlegm hanging from your face, trying to just get some air. Once we come through it, you know, to me it was dark, extremely smoky. I couldn't see all this timber. I thought I was standing in a meadow at this point. And I called Jay and I told him that we managed to get into some black, and I felt that it was going to be a hot, smoky safety zone. Neither one of us received any heat injuries running through the fire that we got into to get into this black. We might have been here for a minute or two at tops, and there was a tree that torched over here, and we got some radiant heat from it, and we had felt the embers hitting us with the wind. And at first it dawned on me, I thought it was weird because I originally thought we were in the grass, we're in a meadow. And at that point in time, I grabbed Josh and I told him, you know, we'll just bump over out of the way here
and we'll be just get away from the radiant heat from that tree.
And all of a sudden it went from that to instantly we were being burned. And and Grant is standing next to me at this point, and I'm kind of down on one knee, and he goes, you know, we're burning, you got to deploy.
Just an instant blast of hot air. Josh is right here by my knee, and as I feel the skin start to burn on my face, I can look over and I can just see a huge wall of glow, and it's starting to raise into the canopies. I yell at Josh to deploy his shelter, and I say, I'm burning. And at that point I cover my face and my airway. As soon as I bring my hands up around my face, the skin of my hands starts to run, is how I describe it. It felt like somebody was pouring water off. You could just feel the skin bubbling and coming off. At that point in time, it was weird. There's this surge of adrenaline. I think it's your mind telling you, oh shit, you're burning at this point. I had this immense power in my legs telling me it's time to run. You know, and as I was burning, I could remember almost a football stance, chopping my feet, just instantly wanting to run. But my mind's telling me, no, you're not running, you gotta stay put.
So right then, you know, I went for my pack. I was down on one knee, so I went to take it off and fumbled with my chest strap for a second, you know, because our faces it just feels like hot water running down your face because your skin's starting to burn. And so I undid my chest strap and went for my shelter, pulled the shelter out, and I remember trying to grab for the rings. I remember pulling the tab, and I remember getting the shelter in my hand. And I just remember the next thing I know, we're both shaking it out. I just remember the shelter, once we shook it open, it popped open, and we were just scrambling to get inside, you know. It was just all happening so fast, you know. I just remember kind of a teamwork of shaking it out and getting inside.
He opens his pack, and as he gets to the shelter, he's pulling his gloves off. And he tries to do the strap around the shelter, and he misses it and it won't pull. And he finally gets it, and as he flops it out with the new generation shelter, he missed the left and right hand tabs, and he couldn't get the shelter open. I reached down because I could see him. I told him, you missed the hand tabs, and I grabbed it and I just shook it once, and it instantly opened up. I just put it was perfect with the wind, and I put it over his head. And as he was getting in, I asked him, you know, for me, this is the toughest part of the whole deal. Here I am without my PPE, and I have to ask a young man to share his shelter with me. There's a lot of guilt that goes with that, endangering his life because I didn't have my equipment. So he graciously said yes.
I would hope nobody would ever, if it came down to 2 people, 1 shelter, that you would turn someone down. You know, it's somebody's life that's kind of, you know, at stake. So, you know, I don't honestly remember him asking that, but if he did, you know, maybe I said yes. Obviously, you know, he got in. So, you know, I don't remember us having a quick, can I get in? Yeah, you know, get in, you know, kind of thing. I just remember the sensation of burning, him yelling, I'm burning. The next thing I know, I'm curled up at the front of it, you know, just tucked up in the top, and he had kind of grabbed the edges and just sat straight down, so he was leaning forward, and he was trying to sit on the edges, and I was just kind of huddled up at the top of the shelter. And at that point, you know, I said, are you okay? And he asked if I was okay, and I told him, you know, I know my face is burnt and I can feel it. And I asked him if he was okay, and he said that his hands were burnt pretty bad, and that, you know, he could see the skin sloughing off his hands. As we laid there for a second, I was telling him that, you know, I could feel my airway getting tight. You know, you watch the videos and it's always protect your airway, and we're in a shelter. You know, there's a possibility that this could be our last, the last stand pretty much. We might not make it out of here, depending on what happens after this. And so right away, it was July and I was due to get married in August. And so first thought that comes to my mind is, my family and my fiance. And I started praying right away and, just going, kind of making my peace, because I wasn't sure, if this was going to be it. And I was doing it all out loud and, started praying out loud with Grant for a little bit. And then we checked on each other again, asked him how he's doing. And Grant decided we had set the radio right outside the shelter. And so he kind of lifted up the shelter and checked around to see if it was okay, what the temperature was like out there, and got out.
I told him to stay in the shelter. I crawled out. The radio that I had, I dropped right near the shelter because I couldn't hold on to it when I was being burnt. And I picked it up and tried to call emergency traffic, mayday, mayday, emergency traffic. There's been a deployment, and I couldn't break through the radio. Took several times just before operations, and the other 2 Forest Service engines could hear it just down the hill from us here. And then it took an incredible amount of time, it seemed like, but it was probably like 5 minutes, 7 minutes before we could relay enough directions between us that they could even begin to figure out where we're at.
They came through with one of the vehicles they had, and just a command truck, and came through, and we could see their headlights. And so Grant said, just stop right where you're at, we'll come to you. And so I grabbed up my fire shelter, and Grant threw down the radio. He's like, I'm gonna leave the radio here to mark the spot. And then they were running towards us and we were running towards them, and we were just hauling towards the truck. And we jumped inside the Expedition and turned back around and went back out to the front of the house. And that's when we were trying to get out of there, and the windows were rolled up in the vehicle because of smoke, but there was so much heat and in our burns and stuff that we were just begging them to roll down the windows, because we needed some airflow blowing on it, because it was just felt like it was like we're still burning. So we went out, we started heading back towards 71, and we had to stop multiple different times because there was such little visibility. Eventually we did make it out to 71, and there was a Rapid City engine there, and it had a paramedic on it. Had the city paramedic get in with us and drove to Hot Springs Hospital. And once we were there, they x-rayed our lungs and made sure our airways were okay. And so from there we loaded up and went to regional hospital.